You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Well, hello again, everyone. This is Doug Thorpe, and you're listening to another episode of Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Today, we're going to preview a story of an entrepreneur who has opened a new chapter in his life, so to speak, and done a startup of a tech-based company. But I'm sure there's a backstory that led up to this, and we'll get him to describe that. His name is Peter Wasmer. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Doug. I really appreciate being here.
Yeah. So before we get into the story of the business you're doing now, give us a little bit of that backstory, the journey you've been on, and kind of experiences you've had that have led you up to this place where you are in this particular chapter of life.
Sure. Well, my first real long-term career was in equipment leasing, and we used to lease all different types of equipment to Fortune 500s, whether it was computer systems or forklifts or machine tools. We had a relationship. We established a good sound trust basis, and we would have an opportunity to help them acquire equipment through operating leases. And in that company, we built that up to, I think it was about $650 million in a portfolio size. And we were fortunate to sell it in December of 2007. I continued on with that company for a couple more years and then parted ways in about 2009. And in 2010, after having played around with building several different Facebook apps and things like that was formative at the time. I was approached by some investment bankers who wanted to put together a leasing program for Harley-Davidson motorcycles. And it was really intriguing for a number of reasons. I loved Harleys. I didn't really know that much about them. And I certainly understood leases, and our perspective on how leases operated worked quite well when it came to looking at Harley-Davidsons, as it turns out, because they hold their value very, very well. And so in 2011, we started up Chrome Capital and put together a system that nobody else in the automotive world has, or since then has put together, which included being able to automate for any dealer across the country that signed up with our platform the ability to create a lease for any asset that they had on their floor. And at the time, we were specifically focused on Harley-Davidson motorcycles. So a dealer just simply, these dealers, look, they didn't know anything about leasing, right? They only knew about the motorcycle, and they would meet a fella or a gal who wanted that motorcycle, and their job was to put the two together and put them on the seat and get them out the door. And the mandate for us was, look, if you're going to build a system, it needs to be fast, and it needs to happen right away. So we automated all kinds of things that were manual at the time. When we first came into the market, if you can imagine this, people were still handwriting applications and faxing them to a funding company, waiting for a response, which could take 24, 48, 72 hours for somebody to actually process that. And then they would call the person up and hope to get them back in the door to get them on the bike.
Wow.
Well, the challenge with motorcycles is that 80% of the time, somebody walks out the door after having looked at a motorcycle and identified, yeah, that looks cool. They never come back. So when they're in the store and they identify that, we had to build a system where they could immediately effectuate that passion, that desire, and give them the yes and put them on the bike and get them out the door. So our process did that through a series of systems, which were built on experience. You know, our systems at the equipment leasing business were, I think a nice way to put it would be separate and non-conversational. So we had the same information that had to go into 5 different systems in order to manage this portfolio. and each needed a team of people to manage it. So very expensive and not really efficient at all. So when it came time for Chrome Capital, my mandate was, look, I want one system where all of the information goes in, and that information is input by the dealer and the rider. And we look at it, we process a response immediately. And then if it's a yes, we can deliver documents immediately to the rider and the dealer to sign, and they can get the deal done. So we actually got that process down to a point where, we were on the I won't say the leading edge, but we were an early adopter, if you will, of DocuSign. So we got to a point where we employed what we called TGM, third grade mentality, in the way that we built our systems, right? So anybody who looked at it could understand what needed to be input. They would push a button, get a result, and they could move on from there. And so we got to a point where somebody could get a yes on their credit decision, say yes to a certain lease structure for 2, 3, or 4 years, and within minutes actually be able to sign the document. So it was a very, very fast system and worked well. That's background on really how we got to where we are today. It was formative from a number of different perspectives, which was I didn't know anything about Harley Davidsons or automotive when I got into it. So I looked at it from a consumer's perspective. How would this experience need to look if I were a customer walking into a dealership and I said, geez, I like that bike. What's that process going to look like? And what are my options? And so we looked at it through that lens and built a business-based app that allowed any dealer across the country to put those leases together.
Very neat. Very neat.
Yeah.
So with the accumulation of that experience, talk now about the venture you're into and the market you're trying to serve there.
Right. So I'll take a step back and identify that the Harley Davidson leasing platform was the genesis of that was a desire by dealers to have alternative funding options for their customers. So it was a market-based desire that was the genesis of that business. And that's the same thing that's happened with Pro Valet. I originally came at this concept from a consumer's perspective. Having a pool and having pool service, I was not overly pleased with how things operated. I didn't know what was happening when somebody showed up. And the straw that broke the camel's back was when we had installed some new lights in the pool, and I went out there at 10 o'clock at night, and the light was off. And I thought, well, shoot, that thing's gone out already. It's not that old. And I went through the process of communicating with voicemail and never heard anything back. And about 30 days later, went back out by the pool at 10 o'clock at night, and the light was on. I thought, well, that's cool. It went back on all by itself. Well, no, it didn't. I got a bill in the mail the next day. So I thought there's got to be a better way to manage this relationship. I like these guys. They're good guys. I like them and trust them, but there's got to be a better way. So we started thinking about what does it look like to have that relationship. And again, like leasing, it's a triangulated relationship where you have a service business, you have somebody who delivers that service for them in the field, and then you have the consumer. So I went to my pool service business and I told them about my experience, and they said, well, they really needed something like what we were talking about. And so again, this was a market-based desire to have what we've been able to put together. And we've continued to evolve it and iterate on it based upon more market input. And so right now we have a platform that, although we originally focused it on pool service businesses, we did build it agnostically, and it works extremely well for any regular interval service business. And that was the terminology I came up with when I was looking at service businesses as a whole. It dawned on me that there are really two types. There is an appointment-driven business, which is one that addresses an acute problem. Your hot water heater blows up, you have to call the plumber, he comes and fixes it, gives you an invoice, you pay it, you're done. versus regular interval service businesses, which is where you have an ongoing relationship where they deliver a regular service to you on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis. So pool service, lawn care, pest control, any one of those regular interval home service business, chimney sweep, it's kind of a long-term annual interval, but it's still in that mix. And so we went about the process of building out this three-way platform.
So with that, as anybody who's had an idea and inspiration for a business and they've created a startup venture, if you don't mind, without maybe sharing any deep dark secrets, talk a little bit about the journey and the fits and starts you might have gone through trying to get this thing off the ground and into the market.
Okay. Yeah. Well, one of the things I learned in my former experiences in building systems is that it's a really good idea to, number one, you get the input from the marketplace, and then you craft your own ideas around how you think it needs to look and act. And then you have to invest in building a minimally viable product. And, the challenge with that first step is that you're going to spend an extraordinary amount of money, and it's not a product that you're going to really be able to bring to market. You're going to bring it to market, you're going to test it, and people go, that's interesting, that's cool, and they'll give you feedback on it. If you were to take a product at that point and it completely fails, you might have to pivot and figure out, what do I do with this thing that I built? But so that's the first hurdle, is you've got to figure out, how do I build the basis for this idea as inexpensively as possible? Something I'm not very good at, by the way. I don't know how to not spend a ton of money on these things. A lot of people out there with a lot of great ideas. If you know how to code, I can tell you that it saves a tremendous amount of money. I do not know how to code. I know how to hire good people, and they tend to be kind of expensive. So. But the upshot was, we took what we had to market. We had people take us up on it, and of course it broke and it failed, but they liked what we were putting out there. And so we ended up going to several pool shows, to these big demo shows where all kinds of equipment and people are and what have you. And we got a lot of really good feedback. I think the one thing that I remember from the early part of the process was people who came up and said, geez, it's really cool. I like what you guys are doing. But those guys over there do that, and those guys over there do that. And it would be really cool if you guys could all kind of come together and have one system. So I started asking the question, like, well, what is it about that system that you really like? And what is it about that system that you really like? And when I started to get consistent feedback from people, I said, well, we should integrate that in with what we're doing. And so that's what we've done. And the end result is, business process automation for a small and medium-sized company just hasn't been done before. We have a single lens through which a company can operate their entire business. So all of their scheduling, all of their dispatch, all of their invoicing, all of their customer payments and customer communications happens through the one single lens. So it's a full CRM. Anything that happens for that one customer is attached to that customer record. So when you look at that customer, not only what the bill was and what was paid, but every single service that either you delivered or they requested, which is another component that we've integrated, which has become quite popular, in that much in the same way that I would like to have had some way to communicate with my pool company back at the outset, letting them know that, hey, my light is out, instead of leaving a voicemail in the dark. We've developed a component of the homeowner app that allows a customer to push a button, type up a little description, and add a video. And when they hit submit on it, it lands at their service company's dashboard for execution. The guy can actually dispatch it immediately to somebody, or schedule it into the future, or create an estimate based on what he sees. He doesn't have to go back out to the house to find out what it is. I mean, we're saving a tremendous amount of time and energy to help people run their service business.
Well, and to your point, often these service businesses, they are, kind of one man shows at the start. It's, and I use a phrase, and I mean no disrespect whatsoever. I call it chucking a truck, that has an expertise. They are selling to homeowners, and they want to provide good service. And
Mm-hmm.
there's no question about their commitment to the market, but process to get there, systems to manage and balance things. And for those guys and gals that are owners of those businesses, a lot of it is done with sticky notes on a computer somewhere in an office or a service center kind of building. Message comes in overnight or a phone call comes in, you jot a note on a sticky pad and you hope that you can remember where you put it and how you want to schedule it. And sometimes they get lost and forgotten, and the homeowner is sitting there going, I called you on Monday and here it is Monday week and I haven't heard from you. What's going on? And oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. So
I'm sorry, good.
Well, so my point is, you're right. I think with the amazing technology that's available now, you can have that triangulated opportunity for the homeowner to raise their hand and say, "I need service," and to elaborate on it, even by maybe taking a picture or a video of the problem, and then letting the service dispatch person triage right there and say. Some of the businesses that are a little larger, they've got, I'm thinking of like electricians and plumbers. They've got master electricians, master plumbers. Well, maybe you don't need to send that guy. Maybe you just need to send somebody with the right wrench to tighten a connection and everything will be okay. Right. But you don't know that until you've had a look at it, and trying to streamline all that and systematize it is a big challenge for those business owners.
It is, and one of the what we found is that where you clearly illustrated exactly how life starts in a service business, and where we find our market really getting traction is where those same practices and policies have stayed in place. The sticky note policy, right, has stayed in place, and they have quadrupled their business. They now have 5, 8, 10. 15 techs in the field, and they still have they're shouting across the office to one person or another. They're trying to communicate in and amongst themselves. None of it is tied to the customer, and they're trying to operate. And so it's where that confusion and where that conflation of data comes, that we're finding some traction for Pro Valet, because people have said, we need something different. And the good news is that they typically have a fairly good list of their customers. And that's really where we just need to start with anybody. It's just, we need to get a good list of the customers. We help them clean it up, upload it, and then we will actually rebuild all of their workflows that are working for them through our system. And now it's automated. Now you don't have to remember things. You can just simply manage it. Managing their scheduling is now, it's not a matter of moving a piece of paper from one book to another and hoping that Billy the tech got that. It's just simply click and drag and move the job to Billy, and when he opens up his phone, boom, there it is. So just creating this environment where we're obviating a lot of the consternation that seems to happen. The friction, I guess, is a better word for it.
Yeah. And to that point, creating efficiencies in that business is the challenge for the owners of those service businesses, because the old model that has existed for decades is the notion of all the techs, drive into the office to get their job orders for the day. And then they dispatch from the office, and maybe they get to drive the company truck home or not. That's another wild card. But the point being, there's a lot of downtime of just moving around, getting into the office, maybe getting supplies and materials, and then heading back out to the field, and then having those jobs lined up in a way that might not be very efficient from an overall scheduling standpoint. I mean, if your business has a footprint of I'll say 25-mile radius from your office, there's still a lot of downtime that could be inadvertently or accidentally created by just the way you structure your dispatch.
That's correct. Yeah, so I'm a picture person, and one of the pictures that we like to present people once we have their data loaded is we can show them where all of their customers are on a map. And then we can show them separately what the routes look like. And if you have, 2 jobs on the east side of town and 6 jobs on the west side of town, and you might think that, well, okay, that's on Monday, and on Tuesday, it's just the polar opposite. Well, maybe you need to rearrange so that Tuesday's out east and Wednesday's out west. I don't pretend to be a logistics expert, but we just simply paint the picture for them to be able to make those changes. And I think, the fact that the technicians who use our app, they're GPS tracked. So not only can you see where they are on a map, but when they check into a job, they timestamp and location stamp. So there's some accountability there. But each one of them starts the day with a route optimized series of jobs. So good point about the fact that some guys may take the truck home. Some guys may end up starting at the office with the truck. Wherever they start their day, their list of jobs will automatically be route optimized, which they can, of course, override. They may have a standing order for Mrs. Johnson at 10 o'clock on Tuesdays, and they can click and drag and move her to that slot and be done with it. But anyways, it's been an interesting process to watch how we can help people improve their day. And again, it's what I do find one of the challenges for us is helping people see the value in something that's different than something that they've created over time. So we're not in a position to tell people at all ever how to run their business. We just simply give them the software, and they tell the software how they want to run the business, and that works great.
Yeah. Well, I think you raise a good point, and kind of in what I'll call the legacy of ownership, and this is true just about in any entrepreneurial venture. It doesn't have to be a service business. The owner-founder starts the company with a vision of something, some service, some product, some solution that they're bringing to the market. And then they typically evolve their operating systems around that delivery, whatever it is. And oftentimes, those systems are not very sophisticated. It's a bare bone, step 1, step 2, step 3, job done, now I get paid, yippee, and it's that kind of mindset. And as the company grows, to your point, you get in a service case, you go from 1 truck to 2 to 3 to 4 to 10. All of those steps and the moving parts now all of a sudden are exponentially more difficult to manage, and certainly to manage well so that you can build a healthy margin in your business. Because the more time you spend on the road, not on the job, well, that's eating margin, because you're paying for people, you're paying for gas in the truck, you're paying for, all of that downtime. And that erodes your basic operating margin. So the more you can do to streamline those things, tie a day of work into a more logical route order where time between job is minimized, distance you travel is minimized, all of that. That's the way you optimize. And in that environment, what I've seen happen is companies can go from 1 truck doing 4 jobs a day to maybe 6 jobs a day. And guess what? Your revenue, if you just think about it as average tickets, you just went up 50% for the day because you got exactly 2 more jobs done.
Exactly right. One of the things that we've been challenged by the market to do is produce a report for them that shows, is this customer profitable? And people think, oh, it's an easy equation. I charge them X number of dollars, and it takes about a half an hour of my guy's time, and I reduce that and the cost of maybe the cost of some supplies or something like that. That might be the case. And in your head, you might have a general idea, but better companies are using data to drive decisions. It isn't that the data is good or bad. The data is what it is, but to actually be able to see the hard data is really important. And so because our technicians are GPS tracked, we can track the amount of time, exactly to the point that you just brought up about this gap time. What happens in between? How much time is in between each job, and then how much time do they spend on the job? Those are expenses that are not easily calculable unless you have that GPS data. So we're excited about bringing that. That's one of the things that our guys are working on right now to bring to our customers, and we continue to drive towards presenting relevant data that people want to see in a way that they just currently don't have insight to it. And I'm excited about that part of what business process automation really means to a small business, because right now they're just guessing. And the other thing, quite candidly, that a lot of the companies that we've spoken to, they're happy at the size that they're at. They have a certain size business that feels right to them in terms of number of customers that they can manage, number of employees that they can manage, and they don't really want to grow it much larger. And one of the things that we're aimed at is, how do we help somebody extract more out of that bucket of business? And so far we've been quite good at it, because when you take out certain manual tasks and you automate them, now you have time available. And when you increase your or decrease your bill to cash time from 20 plus days down to 2, because ProValet Payments automates your payments, now you have your working capital when you want it. You're not spending time chasing money. So there's a whole series of attributes that we're touching, which I think end up helping somebody put more capital to their bottom line, including, by the way, on the payment side. A lot of these smaller businesses are very sensitive to the cost of processing, and when processing becomes excessive, they would like to figure out a way to, well, I don't really want to increase my prices per se to cover that cost. I wish there was a different way. Well, with our platform, they can tell the system, hey, maybe I could charge my customers a convenience fee. And people sit on both sides of that fence. Some people are great with it. Other people would never charge their customers a convenience fee. But if they do charge their customers a convenience fee, they're going to take that percentage that they charge them. They're putting that right back into their bottom line. We have a customer who was spending $6,000 a month in credit card fees, and with our program, he got it down to $1,000. So $5,000 per month. And nets him $60,000 a year. Or if you're looking at, your revenue and what kind of a 20% revenue base, it's like adding 300 grand to your bottom revenue number and pulling $60,000 in profit out of it. By the way, for doing nothing, it just happens automatically. So that's the order of magnitude that we're talking about in terms of hard dollars that we're saving companies.
Yeah. Well, back on your starting point in that, the whole idea of knowing customer profitability, that was something I was taught early in my business career. I had joined the team of a large regional bank who was an incredibly well-run bank and highly profitable. And one of the parts of the DNA of that bank was a system, a giant database that captured all elements of bank operation. We knew the unit cost of taking a deposit from a customer, or clearing a check that was in the deposit, or wire transfers and all of that. We knew the unit costs, and systems fed this database. So a user of our services, there was an associated unit cost of all the support we gave the customer, and then we turned around and we gave credit for deposits that they had with us and fees they paid, etc. So we could calculate a very direct customer profitability. And the way the report looked, you got a view of the prior month, you got year to date, and you got prior year. And so when you hit the profile button, that was the screen you saw on any customer relationship. Some of our business customers had multi-tiered subsidiary activity. Well, we could roll all that up and we could look at. So then, particularly on the commercial side, when a large client came knocking and said, hey, I need financing for a new venture or a new project, we could look at all of that and we could make the determination of how deep we were willing to discount our pricing based on the value of the relationship. And the relationships that were already profitable, we were very friendly to those customers. And for the customers that were more users than contributors, we were pretty aggressive in our pricing.
Charged accordingly.
Yeah, we charged accordingly to try to make up whatever target we wanted. And as a byproduct of that, our bank was able to run off 64 consecutive quarters of earnings growth. And we had, and that's, do the math, that's 16 years of quarter over quarter earnings growth as an organization. So 16 years takes you through 2 or 3 economic cycles. All the markets weren't perfect for us over that period, but we had a method and we had a way and we had a discipline about knowing that. And take that down to the small business that you're talking about serving. I think a small business owner would be wise to know the same thing and look at a customer. And if you've got a customer that's been incredibly loyal and they call you to troubleshoot something, well, you just might want to think about making that a freebie. Just say, you know what? I recognize your time with me. I'm going to send a tech out. We're going to look at this, no charge. We're going to just, in good faith, it's a show of our appreciation for your loyalty to us. And, we're going to pay it forward. We're going to come look at your situation, do the estimate and all that, no charge.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And it's something little, but in the big scheme of things, it doesn't hurt the company. And in fact, I would argue it goes quite the opposite. It lets that faithful customer know that you're paying attention and you care. And
100%.
You want the relationship to be sustained. So,
and that's one of the things that we're really hard to measure customer loyalty. I think one of the things that we're advocating for is avoiding the phone call on Monday morning where somebody says, hey, listen, don't bother showing up this week. Right. We're done, and you don't, and the owner has no idea why that's the case. There hasn't been a way to communicate from the customer side to the service side in an easy way that doesn't create friction or some sort of confrontation, because people will avoid confrontation. They get you've seen this in business. People get all kinds of upset and they won't say anything to the offending party. They'll pack up their toys and leave the sandbox. And so instead of doing that, what we're advocating for is, hey, look, pick up the app and give the guy a rating and tell him why you're unhappy. It doesn't go out publicly. This is just to him. And so he'll actually so in our case, where we have the ability to go back and look at a service and you go, that one wasn't really quite that good. You can give them a 1 to 5 star rating. And if you give them something less than 4, it's going to land on the dashboard as a follow-up item. So if Mrs. Johnson gives you 2 stars for some reason, you now get that alert and you can pick up the phone, you can call and say, hey, listen, you've been a customer, to your point, for X number of years. We love our relationship. I noticed you gave us 2 stars. What can we do better? Now you're retaining, now you're really addressing the problem and understanding what it is. And if you can solve it, obviously you will.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all good.
Yeah.
Well, Peter, we're about up on our time for today. Thank you so much for sitting in and sharing all this great wisdom, great experience. And tell the folks the best way to get a hold of you if they're interested in knowing more.
I would love for somebody to look me up on LinkedIn. You can look up Pete Wasmer, or you can send me an email at peter@provalet.io.
Okay. Provalet.io. That is the service platform we've been talking about, folks. So, as always, this information will be in our show notes. So hop down there. And one last time, Pete, thanks for joining.
Doug, thank you very much. Really appreciate being with you.
You bet. You bet. Well, with that, folks, we're going to sign off, say goodbye, and thank you for listening in. I know your time is very valuable, and I much appreciate your participation, joining us in these discussions. As always, I like to remind people, if you're listening on your favorite streaming service, we do have a video version of this over on YouTube, a channel by the same name, Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Hop over there, take a look at the archive. Let us know if we've missed a subject that you are interested in. Drop me a line through any of the contact points on my website at dougthorpe.com. Would love to hear from you, and certainly react to any feedback you've got or ideas that you suggest. But again, with that, we're going to say goodbye. Go out there, make it a great day.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.